Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today I want to talk about some news stories that have been piling up a little bit. And it's not surprising that we're seeing these stories come out, especially in the wake of Joker. But it is interesting to note some of them, because some of them do seem to be not necessarily great ideas. Um, so, to start off, Joker had a very big opening weekend. It's getting rave reviews from people that have seen it, audience scores, stuff like that. Rotten Tomatoes, I think it's sitting at like a 90% currently, but that might have fluctuated. But the thing is that now that that movie has become very successful, now people are talking about other villains that could, other DC villains that could do the same treatment. Now, the only issue I kind of have with doing that idea is very much so that the director has admitted that this script did not originally have Joker in it, and it's kind of obvious from the advertising that that's the case. But it worked out to be a really good Joker movie because they tweaked a few things here and there, and they got the character right. Um, but now they're talking about doing similar things with, I've heard TwoFace, and today I also heard Lex Luthor getting one, and we'll go into the Luthor one in a minute, because that is very interesting and or cringy depending on how you want to look at it. But as far as the spawning of these, and I'm sure we're going to see more announcements very similar to or more stuff coming out of the rumor mill in the next few days or the next coming weeks about other villains that DC might want to give this treatment to. But right now, all we're working with is Two-Face and Lex Luthor. Now, the Two-Face one hasn't gotten a lot of elaboration to it. Again, these are rumors, so take everything that I'm saying with a grain of salt. But with Two-Face, I think you might be able to do it. With most of the Batman villains, I feel like you could probably do it, just because they're so real. Because again, Batman's just a regular guy running around in a high-tech suit. He's just trained himself physically and mentally to the basically the limit of that humans can. And so all of his villains could be real people, and I think that's what helps out. You can't have a Doomsday origin movie that's like Joker because it wouldn't really make sense. Because Doomsday is a being that can kill planets. You can't do the same type of deal with it that you did with Joker. But I think it could work for the Batman villains. I think it could work for Two-Face because he has a very interesting story with the split personality, and depending on what origin they want to go with, what idea, he gets the acid splashed in his face and stuff like that, which is from Long Halloween. But I don't know. It would be very interesting to see exactly what they would do with that character. Now, the one for Lex Luthor is very interesting to me, as well as kind of concerning. So, the one with Lex Luthor is, and this is the way they're painting it, is it's Lex Luthor becoming the president of the United States. You can imagine all the things that Hollywood could run rampant with given that scenario. All the Trump derangement syndrome that could leak into that given that scenario, and maybe given the wrong type of director and writers on the project, which Warner Brothers has not done an extremely good job of, at least, past a couple years ago. So that's just a bit concerning. Now, there was some speculation in the article that I read. They said they could paint it kind of like a Citizen Kane thing. We get to see him from like a kid all the way going up and becoming a successful businessman, and eventually the president. But he has like a dark side and shit. Like, I think you could make things work with Lex Luthor. I just don't necessarily think you need to make him be president. Maybe at the end of the Maybe if you did a movie like that, maybe at the end of it, you can make a hint like, "Hey, what are you going to do now? Run for president or something like that." You might be able to stick something in there as like a reference, but I don't necessarily know if you should go that far with just one film if you're going to do something like that. I think you would probably go to when he's a businessman, maybe throw a few Superman things in there. And apparently, this would also be again similar to the Joker in the sense that this would be its own contained thing. Lex Luthor would exist on his own in a different universe. This would be basically again without Superman, without a lot of any of that supporting cast, or maybe you throw in some, but just not Superman. Um, So again, I feel like that would be interesting yet concerning. But again, this is something that has been happening a lot. And again, this goes back to the idea of they want to make everything a franchise. And even though these films would not be directly connected, they were all kind of spawned from one another in a sense. If these other two films do wind up getting made. Or if more films similar to Joker wind up getting made. And again, I'm not opposed to that. I think the superhero genre should go back into the R rating, like they did in the late '90s and stuff, and what they've been starting to do now with the Deadpool films and the why it's slipping my mind at the moment. But with that, with Joker, with all these other movies that are going to be coming out that are going to be rated R, and now they're allowed to use that rating and Hollywood realizes that they can do this, then I would like to see more. And Warner Brothers again has been doing that different than Marvel in the sense that they are willing to go to the R-rated film. Marvel will not. Again, there's a speculation that maybe they'll put it out through Fox Searchlight or something, so Disney doesn't have to be directly branded with it. But again, Warner Brothers is willing to go rated R and then willing to put good effort into rated R films. And 20th Century Fox was too before they were absorbed, which again gives kind of Disney the Deadpool problem. But even though they've said they're not going to change him, but this is going to be that's really kind of Warner Brothers' ace in the hole in this whole kind of superhero build-up movie thing, where they're willing to go to more adult places than what Marvel is willing to go to. The Marvel wants to stay kind of the kid-friendly thing. DC's willing to experiment with it, and I think that's a good idea. I think there should be more experimentation in the superhero genre in general, and Marvel seems to be doing that a little bit with like their new slate and stuff like that. But again, we don't really have a lot of movies like Joker. And I think, I think Joker is kind of a special case in this where, he's a well-known character. He's been in many films. Obviously a lot of Batman films, Heath Ledger and Jack Nicholson with the Nolan trilogy and the original Tim Burton films, respectively. So there's a lot to go on for moviegoers when you put the Joker on screen. They have something to compare it to. Not so much with TwoFace or Penguin or some of the other villains. I mean, they've had interpretations like Danny DeVito's Penguin or like the Penguin from Gotham and stuff like that. But for the most part, they don't have as much of a sample size, or at least a really great sample size. Again, I don't think Danny DeVito was actually a bad Penguin, but again, it's just one performance versus many, many others that could happen. So whether or not those other characters would work, I think would in large part depend on their backstories and how that was developed into the film. Because again, I have to bring up the director of Todd Phillips, the director of Joker, is they basically hammered Joker into the plot after the fact, but it worked. It just worked out really well because they feathered it in so good. But in reality, it was not meant to necessarily be a Joker script. And he actually admitted in a press interview that it was basically an art film that was disguised as a superhero movie, which is a good idea to do in this kind of a market because everybody's looking to greenlight those type of things. So that it's just an interesting little tidbit of stuff. Again, I think we're going to be seeing more of these announcements come out over the next week or so regarding Joker and any kind of movies that have been spawned from it. But I want to know what you think. Do you think more DC villains, should get the Joker treatment? Do you think they should get their own films? And their own little contained stories instead of being linked into this big universe. I want to know what you think. And if you do think of a villain, please list them in the comments again. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?